in the Ministries for the Environment to make sure those limits are put in place.
Jackie Dean.
Mr Speaker, the good news for that previous speaker is that under a national government we can have both. We can have sustainable development as well as we can be looking after our environment. But that is not what I want to talk about today, Mr Speaker, because I have a far more important message for the House, and that is that this national government is proud on our record on tackling crime. We have a minister who backs the police. We have a minister who backs corrections. This national government is proud that we put victims in the focus of the rights of the justice system. Mr Speaker, what were we left with the previous Labor government? Well, I'll tell you what we were left with. We were left with a criminal justice system in utter disarray. It lacked accountability and lacked any focus at all on the victims of crime. We have put that right. What were we left with the previous Labor government? A critical shortage of prison beds. What were we left with the previous Labor government? Gangs and organised crime that were growing in strength, and the government of the day was losing the fight against P. We had a government of the day which released violent criminals being released on parole, and the legal aid budget was completely blowing out. Violent crime was up 47% under the stewardship of the previous government in the previous decade. Do you know, Mr Speaker, that under the term of the previous government only one law and order policy was released, and that was, guess what, to form a committee? Well, I can tell you, Mr Speaker, that things are different under this national government. In the first 4 years of this national government, we have clamped down on gangs. We have clamped down on organised crime and are winning the war against methamphetamine. We've toughened bail sentences. We've abolished parole for the worst violent criminals, which, by the way, the Labor Party have vowed to repeal. We have put more police on the streets for New Zealanders, and we have given them better tools to do their work. Do you know, Mr Speaker, under this government, reported crime is down in the past 2 years, and reported crime is at the lowest level since 1982. We have seized more than $30 million worth of P in 2010 and $40 million of criminal proceeds, and thus just to date. And that brings me, Mr Speaker, to this year's budget and the huge goals which we have set ourselves, because we believe that New Zealanders deserve to feel safe in their homes and their communities. I believe that this government puts people first, and so that is why I am so proud of the announcements that our Minister of Police made for the budget. $65 million will be prioritised, in operating expenditure over the next 4 years. What will that do? We know that 2/3 of prisoners have addiction problems. We know that up to 90% can't read or can't write well. We think we should do something about that, and so therefore we are going to increase investment in alcohol and drug treatment. We're going to increase investment in education and skills training. We want to reduce the likelihood of reoffending and increase the likelihood of successful reintegration into New Zealand society. This government, Mr Speaker, understands that addressing the drivers of crime. This government understands that involving whānau and involving communities in rehabilitation and reintegration is the way forward for New Zealanders. Mr Speaker, if we can help prisoners make a positive contribution to society on their release, then we will have fewer crimes, we will have fewer victims, and we will have safer communities. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
The Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, I'm going to later in this contribute